Hello, queerlings. Lee here up in the intro. Just wanted to give you a little heads up about this episode. It's not a regular episode, it's kind of an extra. I originally recorded this back in the beginning of October with my wonderful guests that you're about to hear, Alyse Knorr and Leesa Charlotte. And it was to promote their upcoming Sweetbitter Podcast, which is an investigative show deep diving into the life and loves and history of Sappho. And everything in the world kind of got very busy. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it out before their show. But I am bringing it to you today, now. So I hope that you get a chance to listen to their show. They premiered October 15th, so they've got some episodes out, and it's a really lovely, wonderful listen, and I hope that you enjoy the conversation that we had. And we will have another regular episode for you in January. Stay safe, stay healthy. I hope that all of your holidays are wonderful, and everyone is doing well. Bye!
We've always been here, every single year, from ancient gays right up to today. See, history is queer. Some think it's a new way, but we've got something to say. History is very, 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 very gay.
Hello, everybody. Lee here in your ear holes for yet another bonus episode. I have today with me two wonderful folks that I have become wonderful friends with through nerdiness and queer history shit. I am talking to two of the folks behind a brand new podcast called Sweetbitter, which is an investigative podcast about Sappho, which I'm very excited about. We talked for a little while about like, oh, I want to bring you guys on and talk about Sappho. And then we were like, wait, we've done 2 whole episodes on Sappho. Where are we supposed to go from here? And I was like, well, I just kind of want to tell people about your podcast. So let's do that. So I would like to introduce Leesa Charlotte and Alyse Knorr, who are part of the team. Hi!
Hey!
How's everybody doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
thanks for having
exciting.
us on.
So there's one other person who's involved with Sweetbitter. It's Ellie Brigida, who you might know from the podcast Les Hang Out. She could not be here with us today, but Leesa and Alyse are going to tell us all about the show. So this is just going to be like a cool gay hangout with folks. So can each of you tell our lovely listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do in podcast land, and specifically this podcast, and how you came to Sappho and wanting to dive into her life and her work.
Alyse, do you want to go first?
Sure. I actually am a lesbian poet myself, so
What?
Yes,
Gay people on this show?
I know, and it's scandalous, and I think that like that. My connection to Sappho is that I'm sort of like her great granddaughter, as far as like artistic lineage is concerned, and so I write erotic lesbian love poems. I'm very much inspired by Sappho's work. I quote her work in my writing often. And I'm very new to the podcasting world. I appeared on Buffering the Vampire Slayer as someone that they could ask about Sappho for an episode involving Willow, Tara, and writing Sappho poems on
on the nude back of your lover.
Yes, exactly.
As you do.
It's an incredibly gay culture thing.
This is what I did on my first date with my wife, like, obviously. So yeah, I was on there for a brief appearance just to talk a little bit about Sappho and her history, and I think Leesa picks up the story from there.
Oh, yeah, because then that's when I heard her on the podcast and I was like, oh my God, there has to be a Sappho podcast out there about her whole life. And I tried to find one and I couldn't find one. And so I creepily contacted and stalked Alyse and was like, we have to create a Sappho podcast. So that's the story of the podcast. I just wanted to listen to it. And so then now we create it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the like, oh man, I want to hear all these things. oh shit, no one's making. Do I have to make that?
I guess I'll do it.
I want to go the easy route. I just want to like sit back and have somebody else do all the work and listen to it. I don't want to spend time making it.
Yeah. So you're welcome, everybody.
That's actually such a gay thing. Like,
yeah. Like, oh no, I just thought of like Pillow Princess for artistry. No, we're a pro Pillow Princess podcast. Yeah, no, it's so funny because like I think we started talking and I was going to reach out to you, Alyse, for our Sappho episode, and then I got in contact with Alex Tidings and was like, well, I can't pass up the opportunity to have Aphrodite herself on this podcast.
It's hard to compare.
In a Xena t-shirt with a Xena mug.
I'm nothing if not predictable. Let's just say that. I know who I am, and I know what I like.
You have a brand.
I have a brand, okay? They said, literally talking on the podcast, that is their literal brand. Yeah, so, and how did Ellie get in touch with y'all?
So I think it was just like the queer podcasting group. When I sort of thought of the Sappho podcast, I was working for a company and trying to like get ideas up, and I didn't want to work with the guy that we'd been working with, as I didn't really feel like he would be the best person necessarily to be helping me put together the series. So
a man? Like talking about Sappho?
I know, right? And I'd already had some like disagreements about some of the content they were putting out and like it being irresponsible, but that's a whole other story. So initially I sort of reached out on queer podcasting. There's like a queer podcasting group. I think you're in it as well.
I made it.
You made it, exactly.
I was in a bunch of other podcasting groups and I was really sick of just seeing like entrepreneur dude post over and over and over, and I had joined another one for like women, even though I'm not a woman, and like every single post was like mommy blog sort of thing, and I'm like, okay, I need to find my people. So I just made like a queer podcasting group, like, hey, I want to talk to other queer people who are doing this, please.
Awesome.
Well, Ellie and I met on there, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
So you sort of helped create this also.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Another podcast, baby. Beautiful. Yeah. So you call this an investigative podcast. Talk a little bit about what you mean by that. Like, what's the structure? This is going to be, I'm not sure when we're going to publish this, so it may already be out, but it's dropping on October 15th. So if I put this out before then, look forward to it. If I put this out afterwards, go find it in your podcatchers.
And binge everything that's there so far.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, I'm interested to hear. So, we did an episode just kind of comprehensively talking about Sappho's life, and I'm really fascinated to hear how you're going to do like a full series on looking at Sappho.
Yeah. So I think there's so much information about Sappho, and people have so much certainty about who she was and what her life was, and really we don't know anything, which I guess is how we're looking at this. So it's basically, there's just so much stuff about her that's tied up in academic books and it's kind of boring, honestly, the way that it's presented. So
the way that it's written about, yeah.
Yeah, it's like for academics by academics. So basically Ellie and I are just kind of going on a journey through her life and legacy and bringing you along for that. So we've interviewed about, I don't know, like 9 or 10 people so far. And we're taking the most interesting parts of those interviews and stitching them into episodes. So I think we're starting on like the Isle of Lesbos and historical context. Yes.
Yeah.
Ever heard of it?
Historical context. Ever heard of it? Yeah, I think, Alyse, when you and I were talking before, you guys were in the middle of trying to find somebody, like a lesbian from Lesbos.
Still working on
still
it.
Haven't
Still
found
working
one.
on it.
But
All right, if you haven't found one by now, I know that we have listeners in Greece. If anybody is a lesbian from Lesbos, I mean, not just a capital L lesbian, but like
A lesbian
lesbian from Lesbos.
Yes.
Reach out to these wonderful folks.
Yes, please. You can
we'd
email
love
us.
to talk to you.
Yes.
But I think that all the time we've invested into reading pretty much everything there is out there academically on Sappho, but then also contacting the authors of those pieces and musicians and theater performers to really take time to talk to them about all these different elements wrapped up in Sappho, like the history of the island of Lesbos, like, you know, the quality and character of her poems, how we receive her fragments through space and time, why there's so much controversy over her lesbian identity or lack thereof. Like there's quite a few like debates and controversies and a lot of mystery. And so just by getting to talk to some of these people, we even conducted an interview entirely in French last week. So we're really going to like all corners of the globe to try to track down like the experts who can really let us know what the latest on Sappho scholarship and Sappho research is.
I love how much you just said we in that sentence. Let me be clear. Alyse read all the books on Sappho and Alyse conducted an interview in French. But I wrote one clumsy email in French. That was my contribution.
Well, and we had a really generous, my friend Allison really generously helped. She's from France, so she's very good. So we kind of made it through the interview. And I think that, like, you know, don't forget too, Lisa, that I typed up like a 25-page document of Sappho notes that you and Ellie read, which was probably really, really boring and painful. But you guys,
that's such a relatable mood from someone who writes 20 to 30-page outlines for each episode, where I'm just like, these people are so cool. You need to know every single thing about them.
It's just like block quote, block quote, block quote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. The person that I did the last episode with, my guest host Ashton was like, our outline is already like 17 pages, and like, it's fine. It's fine. Also, that's double spaced, so if we put it back to single space, it's only like 9 pages. That's fine.
But it's great. Like, I think that I've been having a lot of fun because, so I'm also a university professor, so that's more like the mode that I work in. But then like Ellie and Leesa last weekend were together in Boston and like did live TikTok recordings of songwriting sessions because they're both writing songs like off of Sappho's fragments, modern day renderings of Sappho's songs. So
yes.
There's like
Alyse also wrote a couple too.
I wrote one, and it's the like what is it, the ballad, the power ballad?
Oh, it's a music song too.
I tried the country music, but despite growing up in Georgia, I'm like not much of a country music listener, so it was like a caricature of country. But I did grow up with 90s like alt rock, like power ballads. So it had like a real like Pearl Jam feel. So if you want to hear like Sappho, Pearl Jam, but then you guys wrote like jazz and music. What were all the ones you guys wrote?
We did jazz, we did an R&B track, and one of Ellie's friends who has a really deep voice is going to do that. You know, remember when they always used to talk over the songs? And
yeah.
Because I think the last sentence of that fragment is all night long, and I just want some like deep voice man to be like, all night long. So
that's amazing.
We've done a disco track.
Disco track.
Oh, the disco track.
Disco
is
Sappho.
Yeah.
Oh
there's a video with costumes that I think we'll have to look forward
we
to.
found matching jumpsuits and we did a disco TikTok, which like it's hard because we can't release it obviously until we release, I think it's for the second episode.
Perfect.
So there's 0, 1, 2, so we have like 3 episodes before we get to the disco track. But yeah, it was really fun. I actually never wrote songs before. So, and it was kind of, Ellie had a real like no bullshit approach. She was just like, no, you can do this. Just sing a melody. I'm like, okay. And then we wrote like 7 songs in a day. So much fun.
That's amazing.
They were like live streaming it on TikTok. And so I was just watching it all day, like fangirling out, like commenting on their, like writing comments and just being like, man, these people are so cool. Like wow, like I want to listen to this podcast, and then like occasionally remembering like, oh, I'm on the team that's making.
I'm doing that thing.
I think most of our relationship is actually just all of us fangirling over each other, like constantly, all of the time. Is basically the dynamic of this podcast.
You're so cool. You're so cool. Oh man. So are you? So going into the Sappho fragments and translating them into the songs, are you like taking the what is it called? The rhythm that they were written in, the Ionic. It's been a while since I've done the episode.
We didn't do anything scientific with it. Alyse is the poet. I think that when you recorded your song, it did sound like you did that, whereas we were just like, what works?
So when you when I have this exercise I do with my students where I give them a Sappho fragment, And then I show them a lady singing it on the lyre in Greek, in Aeolic Greek, in a dress, like, kind of looking like she's from archaic Greece. And then I showed them this like contemporary like folk band that actually we interviewed one of the singers and he's going to be on the podcast, but they're playing it kind of like you'd hear at a modern day folk festival. And so the question is like, which translation is more accurate and which translation is more true to because Sappho was like the pop singer of her time. You would have just like listened to her for fun or whatever. So they're kind of trying to translate like the spirit of it into like our contemporary pop folk genres, which I guess is more what you and Ellie were doing, Leesa, if I had to.
Yeah, I just looked at the poems and I was like, I think that will be a funeral song. I think that will be disco. So does this mean that we're going to be featured in your classes in the future, Alyse?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you guys.
Yes.
It's because I can't remember which one. I think maybe it was Diane Rare was talking to us, and she was like, "Yeah, I mean, you don't have Taylor Swift without Sappho. You don't have Lady Gaga without Sappho. Like, she's the descendant, and she sets this pattern of the lyric performer for generations to come."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you guys got to talk to Diane Rare, who is, if folks, listened to our Sappho episode, was one of our two main translators that we referenced, which is
Carson,
really cool.
Was Carson the other one?
Yes, Carson was the other one.
She doesn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, apparently she's like a cryptid.
She's pretty secret.
Yeah.
Pretty secret. I met her one time at an academic conference, and by met, I mean like stood in line for an hour to have her sign my book. It was wild. I was like...
You told me that full story. Please tell me this full story.
Okay, so I was...
Tell everyone the full story.
I mean, so it was like we're in a huge, writing conference, and I see her, and then I'm like going up in line to have her sign my book, like, what should I say? What should I say to her? I've got 2 seconds. I don't deserve to be breathing the same air as her. Should I tell her, like, Ann Carson, would you like me to follow you around the conference and rip up my manuscript and lay it down at your feet so that your feet don't have to touch the floor of this conference because you're not worthy? Because, like, we're not worthy. But what I came up with was, like, Ann Carson, how are you enjoying this conference? And she, like, stopped what she was doing, put her pen down, looked up at me, like, took the measure of me, and very calmly was like, moderately. And then that's all she said. And then she wrote in my book, like most of the time authors will, when they sign your book, they'll cross out their name on the title page and then they'll do a big signature and like best wishes, whatever. Ann Carson, is so humble. Like her entire bio in every book she writes is like, Ann Carson teaches classical Greek for a living in Canada. Like that's her whole bio. And she starts the sequel to Autobiography of Red with like fail better from Samuel Beckett, implying that she failed the first time she wrote this incredible book. Anyway, all she wrote in my book was the tiniest, you need a microscope to just see it, like the tiniest respectfully, A-C. You can't even find it. You need to find it. It's so tiny.
What an icon.
Yeah.
I mean, this is great for me to know in case we ever try to interview Ann Carson and be like, that's not happening.
She's just hiding out in Canada making amazing literature.
You know what? She's aiming to be as enigmatic as Sappho herself.
Oh, hell
and
yes.
She's succeeding.
I like that connection. That's nice.
So, I mean, speaking of that, like, tell me a little bit about do you guys have, like, kind of an end point with the show in terms of what, are you going to have, like, a central thesis going through, or just kind of discovering what other people are saying and kind of let that speak for itself? Because I know that we talked a little bit about, like, there's so much controversy around her and the questions about her orientation, what was truth and actual biographical fact and what was from comedies and, turning her into this ugly straight woman who jumped off a cliff because a man, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But yeah, I'm interested to hear how you're going to tackle those kind of things in the narrative.
Yeah, we don't take like a position on, obviously we think she's a woman, and there's definitely been times in history where people have tried to like posit that she's not. So that would be something that we would be certain of, and that she did love other women, not to say that she's gay or bisexual or whatever, just that she did love other women. That's evidence in her poetry.
Right.
But aside from that, we're not really taking any central thesis. I think it's just more a journey about what's there and what we know and what we don't know.
So the like each episode really takes like a look at a different question. So there will be a question like, what was the island of Lesbos like during Sappho's time? And there might be another episode that says, why do we only have excerpts of her writing? Why don't we have complete poems? So we're kind of, just to get back at that word investigative, like we came up with these questions early on because we wanted to know the answers and we were really interested in them. And so then finding different experts to answer them for us was really a process of discovery for all of us. And we've had a lot of really fun, like, group text about, like, neat things our interviewees have told us. And so I think it really is more of a, like, question-driven, episode by episode, question by question. And just like Leesa was saying, there's no way to know. I mean, the term lesbian didn't exist during Sappho's time. So
right.
She's not really that, the way we think of her now. But how did she become an icon? How did we get the word lesbian from her?
Right.
How did that happen? Which, it didn't really happen until only about 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and, like, we've come across some wild shit. I'm really excited to, like, share that. There's a whole, like, papyrology scandal that we'll go into, I think, around episode mid-season, so, like, episode 4 or something. I think we've got that, which has rocked the classic world.
This has to do with the whole Hobby Lobby theft.
Yeah.
Fun stuff, right?
The guy...
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, arrests have been made. It's pretty intense.
And what, I mean, I know that, you're holding back on a lot of things for when you launch, but what would you say is probably the, like, most out of left field thing that you have discovered or talked to, or the person you've talked to in this process, in terms of, like, okay, who are we going to go out and interview? It's pretty obvious we want to find somebody who, is a translator. We want to talk to people who are in this world. Are there folks that you were like, wow, I never would have expected to reach out to this person in talking about Sappho?
Yeah, I think one thing for me that was really exciting, so we started this project like a year and a half ago, but it never really got off the ground. And when COVID hit, I got stranded in Australia for 6 months. And so I decided that I should drive the project forward and we should actually do the thing. And Google is really location based in terms of, like, who you find on Google. And I had not really thought about that. And so when I started looking for people, I found a lot of Australian academics and stuff, which was really exciting, that I probably wouldn't have found in the US. So Jane Montgomery Griffiths, who we interviewed, did a one-woman show about Sappho that showed in Australia and in the UK, and it's an incredible show, which sadly we can't share with you because there's no version of it available. But we were
the
lucky
ethereal
enough to
nature
watch
of
it.
theater.
Yeah. And I would never have found her. So that was a really fun find for me. So we actually have a couple of Australian academics on the podcast now as a result of that, which is really cool.
Neat. Very cool.
Alyse, do you have a fave? Or an unexpected?
I think that there's, like, these little moments in every interview that I'll just say really move me. I mean, I've cried during some of these interviews. Ellie's cried during some of these interviews. Our interviewers have cried because the words that were written by this woman 2,500 years ago still move people so much that they dedicate their entire lives, their entire careers to translating her and bringing her to contemporary audiences and singing her work and performing her work. And I just think that's incredible. I can't think of any things that are more exciting than that. So to just share those moments, which feel like they come out of left field every interview, when you kind of get out of the weeds and stop talking about all the specifics of Sappho and just talk about why do you love her or what brought you to her, they're always, like, incredibly moving.
I think that would actually be a really good place for us to wrap up a little bit is what does Sappho and her poetry do for each of you, and why do you think that it's stood the test of time? Why make an entire episode about Sappho other than all of the mystery around her?
Well, I remember the first time I read Fragment 31, which is, Sappho's greatest hit, the one where she's watching some man who seems equal to the gods talk to the woman who she loves. And the first time I read that poem, I just felt like I existed, finally, in a way that I had never felt before. Just the way she articulates the emotions of that scene, and the way that every time you go back to that poem, you notice something new, something different, something beautiful, something exciting. So for me as a lesbian poet, I'm always drawing inspiration from the way that she writes about yearning and desire and love as a physical sensation that takes over your body and makes you paralyzed and sweaty and twitchy and nervous. I think that to have a poet during a time right now that's really difficult for so many reasons, who writes about love and beauty is incredibly important and really inspiring.
Yeah, I feel like I can't top Alyse's answer. I was like, of course you're going to ask us this, and then the poet is going to weave this beautiful tapestry of words. And
it's okay. I'll edit it so that you go first, and then Alyse closes it. How about that? No. The magic of editing. Or I could
just say ditto. No, I think we have a quote from Diane Rea that I really that kind of sums it up for me, I guess, which is that we have so many words from men from history, and she's the first woman in antiquity, and she talks about what she experienced as a woman, what women around her experienced, and I think that's really powerful. And a lot of the people that we've spoken to have sort of spoken to that as well. I think that's, for me, what I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that just makes me so much more frustrated and infuriated when people then say, oh, well, maybe she wasn't a woman, or she's not speaking from her own personal experience because there was no such thing as a, individual concept, and it was a collective we, a collective I, and I was just like, can't we just have a woman in antiquity?
Just one.
Just one. Literally the only one. The poetess. Please.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it's either going to make you laugh or cry, the lengths that scholars have gone. I mean, my favorite one, I think I just started like shout texting Ellie and Leesa when I read it, is some guy writing that, oh God, I can't remember the number of it, but the fragment that's about getting all lubed up and oiled up.
Yes.
And
getting
in bed together. He's like, probably this is about taking a nap. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
That is such mental gymnastics.
Right. Yeah.
On the level of like taking the story from ancient imperial China with Emperor Ai and Dongshan and turning the beautiful queer act of like cutting off your sleeve so that your sleeping lover isn't disturbed, and teaching kids in school that story that it's about Emperor Ai and his cat. Which is what I have, his cat or his dog, which is what I have heard before.
Oh
wow.
And it's just like, can you try harder to erase us from history? Thanks.
Maybe the guy who said that, Alyse, just never had the WAP,
Never had the WAP, because that poem
never
is
had the WAP.
That
Sappho was the original WAP.
That poem is very, very
I think when Alyse and I were talking last, I was playing around with the Sappho shitpost generator that our listeners made for us, and I got one, and there was one that was just like, oh, this is Sappho doing WAP. We'll post that on our Twitter, probably.
It's such a nice way to bring her, like back to life or something. Like there's this like really ghostly, awesome feeling of hearing her talking spontaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was so moved by, I really love what Anne Carson said about like the brackets. Like brackets make things more intense, and you see the yearning literally right there in the papyrus, even if you don't have the papyrus in front of you. And I mean, let's be real. I mostly just wanted some way to put the fragment that is just nothing but celery into a whole bunch of stuff, because I am perpetually amused that literally we're like talking about one of the most poetic humans in existence, and something that is timeless and so resonant with anyone who's ever experienced love or attraction. And then we just are also sitting here also going, celery.
There's a really nice range. I mean, she's got some pretty good like boner jokes too in some of the wedding poems, and some pretty good like insults, also.
I know people love to talk about like Shakespearean dirty conversations and Shakespearean insults, and it's I would really like a meeting between Sappho and Shakespeare. I think they'd get along pretty well.
There's a flourish to Shakespeare, but there's a directness of Sappho, which, that colloquialism is what people love about her work. But when it comes to insults, it'll sound like, Gongola, you're the most annoying fucking person I've ever met. That's like a Sappho poem. Yeah.
Oh no, I think that's what is it? Irana?
Irana, sorry.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be Irana. Well, I'm so happy to have gotten a chance to talk with y'all. I'm really excited for this show. I'm very excited to go back to the beginning of our conversation. I'm very excited to just kind of lay back and let this happen and listen to it and not have to make it. as you're like creeping up a couple of days before your launch date and be like, I'm so tired. So I wanted to give both of you an opportunity to tell people where they can find more of you and your work individually, as well as where they can go to learn more about Sweetbitter and find it. Obviously, they'll be able to find it on all of their podcatchers, but where else they can go to do some deep dives.
Yeah, so we're on Instagram and Twitter at Sweetbitter Pod, and we have a website, sweetbitterpodcast.com, so you can learn a little bit more about us there. And I'm Leesa Charlotte everywhere. Leesa with 2 E's. Charlotte, for those of you who pronounce your R's.
Good Charlotte. My favorite band.
Oh. That brought me back to 2002.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just at AlyseKnorr.com. ALYSEKNORR.com.
Yeah. No stalking on social media with Alyse.
It's just because of the students, you know? I don't want them to see my life. So
yeah, that's fair.
But got a whole bunch of poems up at the website.
Yes.
Yeah, and the artwork for this podcast is so beautiful. You guys have like the most gorgeous logo here. I love this art so much.
So that's by my friend Estella. So she's I met her in Bangladesh many years ago, and she's lovely, and I love her art. And every time I do something, I'm like, please, can we pay you to do the art for this? And she's so busy. So we were really lucky that it was sort of like right when the pandemic hit and it was kind of hard for artists. So I was like, please make us our art. Oh. And it's beautiful. We gave her like no direction, really. We're just like, it's gay.
Make it gay.
Yeah. She did such a great job. It's really beautiful.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited to see this come off the ground and for everybody to dive even deeper into Sappho. So thank you both for being here, and say hi to Ellie for me, who is a busy human with like multiple podcasts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, Leesa, you also have multiple podcasts, so like, you know, whatever. I'm just saying.
I'm not putting on the same professional level of podcasting with my Battlestar Galactica podcast.
Your podcast is great. Don't sell yourself.
Alyse and I have got an episode coming up, though, on the X-Men trilogy from the early aughts and how gay it is. So that will probably be out around the same time.
It's you, me, and every cricket in Denver. In my backyard.
That's true.
I was just getting drunk on my back porch talking about X-Men with Leesa, and the crickets were...
I mean, honestly, that makes the best podcast. Let's be real. I mean, there's a reason why we do like a conversation chat cast. Like, I'm so excited to see what you all do and how you frame these, because I'm so fascinated by like highly produced shows and wish I could do it, but it's just not how my brain works. And mostly, I'm like, I just need to talk about things with somebody for an hour.
Yeah, that's kind of how I roll too. So this is a whole new endeavor for me, but I think we'll pull it together.
Yeah, and like, I mean, just to say a word about your podcast, Lee, like, it's so incredibly valuable to have these stories from history being told and shared. And so to have your support on this means a lot. And just to, like, have you doing what you do for the community is incredible.
Absolutely.
And means a lot.
Aww. Thank you. I'm so happy that the world of, like, talking about this in the podcasting medium is growing. I think we probably, like, on the History is Gay Twitter get followed like maybe once a week by a new show that's popping up. And it's really, really cool to see so many people taking the same general concept and being like, but I have things to say about this that nobody else is going to be able to say the way that I can.
Yeah. And I mean,
and honestly, that's what I love about podcasting. Yeah. Like, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday, actually, about why I love podcasting specifically. And I feel like everything else is so, like, tight. The power is so tied up with certain people. And it's kind of true for podcasting too, like, in a sense. Like, if you have the money, you can... And
in the reception, what gets highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that there's still a place for independent podcasts like this, and where you can actually get a level of success. And I think the queer space it's been amazing. The amount of cool podcasts that have come up in that space, like even buffering and stuff. It's like pretty great that was able to be without a huge broadcasting house behind them, you know?
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah.
Thank you both again for coming on and chatting and just generally being gay and excited about antiquity with me.
Thanks so much for having us.
I'm sure this will, not be the last conversation. I know that I'm going to be fully in the future talking about Sappho shitposting with you.
I think that you might have to come on the podcast and talk about that.
I think 100%.
I mean, I feel like I should get our listeners involved in that too. The two wonderful folks who made it for us and talk about their process of like coding. I just put that out on the feed as just like, man, I really want to see this happen. And then a whole bunch of people emailed and was like, I'm going to make this thing. I'm like, oh, cool. This is actually happening. Neat. And then we had a beautiful image of Sappho with like sunglasses, and it was just mwah. It's the perfectly cheeky atmosphere that we aim to go for on this show. Much like your discotheque Sappho song TikToks. So feel like we're kindred spirits there. It's just not as fun unless you like sort of make fun of stuffy academia,
For sure.
Agreed.
All right. Well, everybody go and listen to Sweetbitter Podcast, and we will see you here for another episode of History is Gay soon. Until next time,
stay queer
and stay curious.